Students, this is Arindam Bag here. So today we are going to discuss about the third stanza of the poem Good Morrow, which is written by John Donne. In my earlier presentation, I've discussed about the previous two stanzas. It is already available in the YouTube in my channel. So if you have any doubts there, you can have a look there. So without wasting any time, let's start our lesson today. So what we have, so in this part, the poet says, "My face in thine eye, thine in mine appears, and true plain hearts do in the faces rest. Where can we find two better hemispheres, without sharp north, without declining west? Whatever dies wasn't mixed equally. If our two loves be one, or thou and I loves alike, that none do slacken, none can die." So these are the 7 lines in the last stanza. So let us find what does it mean. My face in thine eye, thine in mine appears. Yes, physically they are very close to each other. That's why their eyes can see each other's face only. Their eyes reflects each other's face only. But that is not the only meaning in this line. That also means something else. There is a different layer of meaning here. This my face in thine eye, thine in mine appears means their each other's eye will actually watch each other's face and nothing else. Their primary concern, their whatever they will see, actually what they will see, that my eyes, the poet's eye, will watch his lady love's face, and his lady love's eye will watch the poet's face. That's the only thing they want to watch. That is their only thing they want to concentrate. They want to keep their focus in that fashion. And true plain hearts do in the faces rest. Well, I forget to tell you, there is one explanation over here, as it has been mentioned here. You can see this is 18, so I'm supposed to describe that one also. So what we have here in 18, the lovers with their arms clasped are close enough for the face of each to be reflected in the eye of the other. Well, pretty much the same thing I said. So the reflection of their faces in each other's eyes reveal their true plain hearts. Yes, their reflection of their image in each other's face, each other's eye, represents their true plain hearts. The world that each sees in the other's eyes is superior to any world that the explorers of the physical universe can find. Well, so these are the 2 lines which has been explained over here. These first 2 lines in the third stanza. My face in thine eye, and thine in mine appears. And true plain hearts, they have very they are very true to each other. They will be honest to each other, and their primary agenda is very plain and simple. That is to love each other. That's why we can say, and true plain hearts do in the faces rest, and each other's face can be seen in each other's eyes. Where can we find two better hemispheres? And it is also been said that their face they are creating their own world, and that particular world is better than the world which the explorer is trying to explore. It's far more better and superior. The world of the lover, the world of these two people, they are creating their own world, and they believe that their own world is far more superior than any other world or any part of the world which the explorers are looking for or trying to discover. Where can we find two better hemisphere? Exactly in the next line, in this third line of third stanza, we can see he is asking this question, that where can we find two better hemispheres? Because there is no better hemisphere than the world of lover. They believe, the poet believe, their world is far more superior than anything could be found in this very world. That's why he's asking, where can we find two better hemispheres? He's trying to compare their world. There is an implied comparison between the world of the lover and the physical world, which is yet to be explored or discovered by various adventurers or explorers. He is We are having an implied comparison over here. He can say, or indirectly he is saying, their world is much more better. That's why he says, where can we find two better hemisphere without sharp north, without declining west? Now, the line doesn't end with hemisphere, rather, it continued till without sharp north, without declining west. That means the world which is found, which is about to be found, or which is already been found, they have some extremities. They have something which is not very comfortable. That's why he says sharp north without declining west. Now, declining west can be realized that the sun sets in the west. That's why he might be referring to that section, declining west. He believes that west is that part where the sun sets. That's why he says declining, where the sun declines actually. That's why it can be described as declining west. So it's a beautiful economic expression we can see over here. And here we have this line number 19. The faces of the two lovers are like the two continuation. You can see the hemisphere of the lovers experience no extremes or climatic changes. I told you that the the world of the lover is without any sort of extremities, like we have in this hemisphere. If you go to Siberia, you will experience the winter is chilly. It's very cold over there. If you visit Sahara, you will experience the summer, the warmth, or rather, it's very hot over there. Two places I would like to mention. In Russia, there is a place Verkhansk, which is the coldest face place in this very world. As we have learned in our school, might be the information has been changed. Maybe some other place has been declared as coldest place on earth and the hottest place on earth. There is a place in close to Pakistan or Afghanistan which is known as Jokakabad. It's the hottest place in the world. So, but in case of the lovers world, the world which has been created by these two peoples, they do not have any extreme weather condition, or they do not have any extreme thing in their world. Everything is very soothing, which is very much satisfactory. So without sharp north, without declining west. Now we have this sharp north. We have one reference over here. Any pointed northern side, and declining west has been referred to bending western side. Without sharp declining west, the line has been explained in such a fashion: two hemispheres are perfect and merge thoroughly without any distortion or deviation. These two people are creating this. We have two hemisphere, northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. So the lover, they are also two, na? They're a couple. So they are also like two hemisphere which combined and created one beautiful world. That's why two hemispheres are perfect and merged thoroughly without any distortion or deviation. The poet wants to mean that love has perfected the lovers to such an extent that they become absolutely one. Yes, the relationship, the love among these two people, it perfect the relationships, that it removes all sort of uncertainties, all sort of extremities, all sort of trust issues. All the things are sorted out, all the extreme things are removed, and that's why their world is much more smoother, and their world is free from any extremities. Whatever dies was not mixed equally. Now, in this case, you need to realize that whatever dies doesn't mix equally. It's actually a philosophy from Saint Aquinas. We are prone to, or we are subject to death and decay. So eventually we will be destroyed, will be removed from this very world, and everything we created around will be destroyed by upcoming time in near future. Nobody can stay here forever. So but there are certain elements like gold. Gold is the only material, gold is the only thing which we can use directly, found from the nature. And it doesn't has any problem of oxidation or any other things. It is quite like it doesn't change its its quality. You cannot change the quality of gold just keeping like that. You need to you need to go for chemical reaction, other things to change the metallurgy of that. But apart from that, the gold found in the nature is always pure. It is not oxidized or anything like that. So that's why he compared these things. The philosophy of Saint Aquinas is over here. That has been mentioned over here. There is a reference. See here, this part. There is a reference to the scholastic philosophy of Saint Aquinas, which states that the things compounded of elements between which there is no contrariety are not subject to corruption and decay. The poet refers to this philosophy in order to stress his point that uh, sorry uh, that of the two lovers love each equally and there is no imbalance between them, then their love will be eternal. See, our body comprises of so many things. We have calciums, we have minerals in our body, and they are not mixed equally. That's why after some time, after certain age, things get loosened up, things are subject to destruction and decay, and we lose energy and eventually we die. So does our relationships also. It is not perfectly pure. So some pure the reference of pure relationship has been mentioned in the poetry of Shakespeare, the sonnets you will find there. Here also the poet refers to this scholastic philosophy of Saint Aquinas, which says whatever dies wasn't mixed equally. If the things mixed with each other, if they do not have any contrariety, then it is not subject to death or decay. But if there is any contrariety, if single portion or a very fraction of part is not mixed properly, then it is a subject to death and decay. Then there is a condition: if our two loves be one, or thou and I love so alike that none do slacken, none can die. Now, this particular word "if" raises many things in our mind. That means the love was not true. If it is true, there should not be any doubt. In the previous stanzas, in the previous part, the poet explains that they are not afraid of each other. They have a very plain heart. They are loyal to each other. They do not have any issue regarding the quantity of love for each other, and they believe their relationship is perfect. But in this case, we can see, if our two loves, that represents that's a very very small amount of doubt is there somewhere. Previously the poet looks very confident that their love is very pure, but in this section he is not very confident that whether his love is pure or not. Why it is like that? That's why he used the word "if our two loves." If our two love means the poet loves for the lad as hers for him. They are two individuals, and hence the love is two. So they both of us love each other. That's why he described in this way: two loves be one, if they can be one. Or thou means, in archaic it means you, and I love so alike. If we love each other the same manner, love in the same manner with equal intensity, you have this explanation in 25, that none do slacken, none can die. Then it is impossible that thou and I, none can die. The poet and his lady love can love each other with equal vigor and intensity. None of them will be subject to decay or death. The poet confirms the power of love to stand against mortality. In mutual love, the lovers are thoroughly merged, lose their individual identity, live above the touch of mortality. Here, the trump of love over mortality, as the conventional poetic theme is expressed in a novel way. So, in the last two lines, we find that there is a hint of doubt, but still he is confident if they love each other in the similar fashion without any discrepancies, then none of them will be slackened, none of them will be subject to die, or their love will be converted into immortality. So that is good moral for you. I hope I am able to explain all the things properly in a proper fashion. I hope you enjoyed my video, and I expect that this video is good enough for you, or it will be you will utilize this in a proper fashion. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share and subscribe my channel.